Yes, here.
Director Clark.
Here.
Director Marsh.
Here.
Director Seaton.
Here.
And Director Sukamel.
Here.
Okay, everybody's here. I'm Chuck Duffy, the general manager. Delia Comito's online, the assistant general manager. And Bill Parkin, our legal counsel, is on. And Barbara, while you walked away, I'm trying to let Bill go off to be with his family here, and I don't think we need him for any items. So if that's okay with your board, we can let Bill go off.
Sympathy to you.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Bill.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Any members of the public who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? All right, I don't. Delia, did you want?
Sorry, I just wanted to remind everybody that we have a local drop-off. Recology has that going on at the Burnham Strip this Saturday from 8 a.m. till noon.
Great. Anything else? All right, moving on to our regular meeting agenda. Our first item is to appoint members to the Parks Advisory Committee for a 2-year term. Chuck or Delia, did you want to speak to this?
Delia, why don't you speak to this?
Okay. Well, I did indicate that the PAC has some general rules of procedure, which dictates that on even numbered calendar years, the board will appoint the 7 members and 2 alternates to the PAC, which is the Park Advisory Committee. And so that's what this item is for. We're looking for the board to reappoint the incumbent members. There are 6 members that have been here for a while, some longer than others, but that's Rick Barker, Susanna Cantrell, Lyle Caulfield, Michelle Dragony, Fran Pollard, and Pat Tierney. And then the most recently elected member or appointed member was Ethan Rayner. And then we also have 2 alternates, Megan Ganaway and Thomas DeMio. So we're looking for board approval to appoint these members to PAC.
I think the whole board wants to express their appreciation to the people who've served on the committee already, and we really appreciate the input that they have. We look forward to the new committee. Would someone like to make a motion to appoint? Oh, Matthew, I see your hand is up. Do you want to speak?
Yes. Doesn't this mean that we should elevate whoever's next in line from an alternate to the regular board?
No, because there are 7 members. The alternates are if we lose a member from the 7.
So we have 6 incumbents plus the new appointees.
Plus, yes. So we have a full committee and then the 2 backups.
Oh, so Ethan Rayner actually should be considered an incumbent.
He hasn't really served on the committee because he was appointed in November, but he will be seated on the board or on the PAC at their next meeting in January 31st.
Okay, I will move that we reappoint all of the incumbents on the PAC for another 2 years. And we also reappoint the alternates, Megan Ganaway and Thomas DeMeo.
And second, and I'd like to particularly thank some of those board members like Pat, who have been a member of the committee, I think, for 6 years now, and going for another term. So some very long-term commitments on the board. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think Pat and Michelle and Fran has been on a long time, and we appreciate all the input you provide and all the help that you give to GCSD. I don't know if I'm missing someone. I apologize if I am. All right, well, we have a motion on the table. Is any further discussion of the motion? All right, could we have a roll call, please?
Okay, Director Dye.
Yes.
Director Marsh.
Yes.
Director Sukamel.
Yes.
Director Seaton.
Yes.
And Director Clark.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0.
And that, all right, moving on. Report on parks and recreation activities.
Excuse me. I think number 2 was the board committees, but I was going to
Oh, yeah,
suggest
you're right.
we
Sorry.
move. I was going to suggest, because I think we have a lot of members of the public here talking, or if you want to speak to something on the parks agenda, maybe we can move that up ahead of the board committees.
That's fine. Move right on to report, which I was doing by accident, report on parks and recreation activities, starting with the update on Junior Land Stewards Program. Can we share a screen and just show the report from the Junior Land Stewards that was in the agenda? This is the program that GCSD is supporting for the 4th grade at Granada Elementary School. It's a program to get kids out into the open space. They're doing planting and of native plants. They're walking around their school site. They're starting a garden of native plants near their school site, and they're taking various walks to Quarry Park. I printed out at least one page of it. Well, I guess that's difficult too.
Okay, there we go.
Great. So you can see this is the plants that they're going in the classroom, and the plants survived the Christmas break. They moved them during the break, but have them back in the classroom now. And the kids are trying some different growing techniques to see if they do better with some, which kind of soil they do better in and so forth. Can you jump down to the next page? And this is just the curriculum includes nature journaling, reading aloud, the life cycle of a seed, and then graphing the result of their plant measurements to get some math in there, and then observing in plants, changes in plants over time. You can move to the next page. That's what they're going to be doing in January, including a walk to Quarry Park. And then these are some wanted posters for bad plants and some signs that they are they've drawn and they're going to laminate to put on the little native plant garden that they're establishing right next to the elementary school. So it's moving along really well, and I think it's a great program for us to support. Anyone have any questions or comments? All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to consideration of disc golf funding. We have a staff report.
How do you want to lead that discussion?
Was put on the agenda a request of Pat Tierney, who's the chair of our Parks Advisory Committee.
Yes, thank you for, first of all, taking this up. Since our November PAC meeting, in which the PAC approved a motion to develop a work plan that you had seen previously for the next year, for 2022, we have been working to investigate some of the finer details of work elements. So one of those is a music potential. These are all potential items that need to be approved by the board and so forth. But we're gathering information to assist you make that decision. So one of them is a music festival at Burnham Strip. Michelle Dragony, a PAC member, is heading that up. And if she's on tonight, that would be good to hear her report. Yes, she is. So is it okay if Michelle talks about that particular item and then I'll get back?
Sure. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hello. I'm working with Joe Flambeau, and Joe Flambeau is working with Delia. Delia has already made a contact with PG&E, and we have an active case now, if you will. I have just been through this process myself, and PG&E does the work for a price, of course. But I think we're on our way to get electricity down there, and that way we don't have to have a generator. We don't have to store fuel. We don't have to store the generator itself. And we won't have the noise of the generator and the pollution. I mean, we're supposed to be going all electric. And then we could build
we lose you, Michelle?
We cut out Michelle.
Oh, can you hear me still?
Now we
And now
can.
we can hear you. Yeah.
I'd like to see if we could get a stage like the Legion has, just something that can make the sound go towards the ocean a little bit more, and allow the sound to be heard by the people a little bit better. And so we're working on it, and I'll report back next month if anything happens.
Did you have anything further you wanted to bring up here?
Yes. So one of the other items that we're investigating, because we've been approached by the public, is a disc golf course. And I know that's an agenda item, so I'm not going to discuss it in detail. And I know that we have some members of the public that want to talk about that, say something about that. But just to know, an update is that it's a disc golf course is not, public disc golf course is not available in San Mateo County. There are private courses over the hill, but they're very expensive. They're at the price of a golf course, of a regular golf course. So it makes it very difficult for families, especially to enjoy disc golf in our local community. So we've been approached by a number of people who have indicated their support for that. And I will stop there and probably let the public later on talk about what their perspectives are. And then if it's okay, I might add something later.
We don't really have any staff report, anything about what's being proposed or what this is just, I guess, general exploration of the concept of disc golf.
Sure.
Yeah, we had discussed it at our last board meeting briefly, and the board directed us to put this on the agenda, but I don't have a staff report on it.
Okay, what we've been looking at are alternative sites. Disc golf is a popular low cost entry sport that's an international sport. It's done by families and people of all ages and diversity. And so there have been, disc golf has been brought up a lot in the past. It was the fourth most frequently mentioned amenity desired at the Quarry Park Master Plan public meeting. And there have been proposals to have a disc golf course located in Murata Surf East. There's also been proposals for a disc golf course located up on the ridges in Quarry Park. The consensus is that up on the ridges in Quarry Park would not be acceptable for a location because poison ivy is too steep. It's not family friendly. You're not going to have children running around through poison oak to retrieve a disc. It'd be an expert course, but certainly wouldn't be one. So we started exploring locations. And another location that has come up is the so-called Sonora Strip, which is Cabrillo Unified School District land, surplus land. And that is just to the south of Coral Reef Avenue. It's used quite informally for recreation and walking, and people's apples, planted apple trees in it. I took since that was an alternative, I took the liberty to contact Sean McPetridge, who is the superintendent of Cabrillo Unified School District. First of all, I said, I'm not representing the board. I'm simply a volunteer on the PAC. And I wanted to see if they might consider that location for a disc golf course, a 9-hole disc golf course. under a temporary short-term lease arrangement or something like that. He got back to me today by email and was, I wouldn't say positive, but mildly positive. He said he's forwarding the idea to his land manager and to legal counsel, and will likely bring it up in a future Cabrillo Unified School District board meeting. So that's kind of quick synopsis of where we stand.
Pat, do we have board members who want to speak on this item before we hear public testimony? Nancy?
Yeah, since we have a number of the members of the disc golf community, I know several who spoke at the PAC meeting here. Since there really isn't a proposal at this point, as you're still exploring, but as long as they've taken the trouble to come, maybe we should go through the public comment now and allow them to tell us what they'd like to see and why they'd like to see it.
That's what I was just going to do. And can you please tell us before you speak where you live? That would be appreciated. So if there are members of the public, can you raise your hand if you would like to speak? You do that down. All right. Jim Kelly.
The participant list.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And hi, everyone. And thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to talk to you about disc golf. I am a resident of El Granada. I've lived here since 2003. Born and raised in San Bruno, and have worked in the recreation industry, worked for the cities of San Bruno and San Mateo for 20 years. In their recreation department. And in the last 25 years, I've been an activities director at Carlmont High School, in charge of all the extracurricular activities for the students. And so I think I have a fairly unique perspective on the need for recreational opportunities, especially for the youth of our community. Echoing what Pat said, disc golf has become an incredibly popular sport over the last year and a half, 2 years. I know we have some people here who can speak to the exact numbers of that. And it's an easy sport to play. It's low cost. And I would just like to talk to you from the standpoint of the need that we have to provide recreation opportunities, outdoor recreation opportunities, especially for kids, because that's who I work with. That's who I've worked with for the last 45 years as a youth coach, as a teacher. And I can say that in the last 2 years, for sure, I have noticed, it's anecdotal evidence, but I've noticed that kids they just need to be doing things outside. I know also being a teacher that there is more anxiety disorder with teenagers, that's who I work with now, than ever before. It's an epidemic. And I know that talking to my students that they don't generally go outside and do sort of unstructured, non-competitive play activities. Our generation has done a really good job of.
Can I interrupt you for a minute? Our normal practice is 3 minutes each.
Oh,
I'm going to start a timer for the next person, and I want you to finish your thoughts because you have some very worthwhile things to say. But can you please?
Yeah, certainly. I'm sorry.
Wrap up. I think you've made some good points.
There's a huge need for our generation to provide recreational opportunities for kids, for families. I believe disc golf is an activity that would be very popular as it's accessible and can provide a lot of great opportunities. And we're hoping that the board will support this and write a letter to the San Mateo County Parks to possibly build a course at Murata Surf East. help to pay for it. And that's our biggest desire.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much. Well said. All right, next is Lucas.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm happy to be speaking on behalf of disc golf and frisbee golf worldwide. It's a great game. I've been playing it for the past several years, and I've been throwing frisbees all my life. I think frisbee golf would be wonderful in this community. I've lived here all my life, and there's a big need to get people outdoors, get families outdoors, get younger kids outdoors. I recently moved down to San Luis Obispo, and I work at a few elementary schools in the area. And I'll ask kids commonly, what are they doing after school on the weekends? And often it's always playing video games, watching TV. And I've recently been able to get a lot of the kids out on the disc golf course, and they're loving it. And I know there's a huge resource there available. Other than that, it's a relaxed outing. You get to walk with your friends. You're usually having casual conversation as you're playing. And we have a beautiful area right on the coast. I know that lots of families and other people would love to come and play a little outdoor adventure in our town. Other than that, the women's game is growing in disc golf. And I think the next evolution in the women's game and the youth game is for some shorter courses. There's a lot of very big courses right now that require some more technical skills. But with a shorter course, way more family friendly, beginner friendly. And I think we have a perfect opportunity to do that here. I don't want to take up too much time, but the disc golf community is a great community. When I show up to a course and there's people in line, I'm saying hey to everybody. Everyone is very welcoming. They'll invite you to play with them. And disc golf is a great game. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, JC Kelly, starting your 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here. And I'm the daughter of Jim, sister of Lucas, who just spoke. And disc golf has definitely become a bigger part of my life because of these two. And I'm not mad about it at all. I've gotten to see the impact the disc golf community has had on them, and in turn me and my mom as well. They've gotten me out to play multiple times, and I can say that I've had an awesome time because it's like Lucas said, it's a relaxed and not very competitive sport. It can be if you want, but if you're not into that, that's totally fine. And that works for me as someone who is learning and wanting to just have a good time and be outside and play. I believe that having a disc golf course locally would be a great asset to the community and bring in a whole lot of great people. I know I would play on it and be with my friends and family. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Leonard Weiss.
Hi, how are you? It's Leonard Muse. I'm from Hayward, so I'm 45 minutes away from you good folks. I'm here because I'm an experienced course designer. I've designed quite a few courses, including one that opened in San Leandro just a couple months ago. I'll tell you about that for a few seconds. It's on a recovered landfill. So it's about as barren and boring as the space could possibly be. But over several years, with a tremendous amount of support from East Bay Regional Parks and 3,000 volunteer hours building the course, we now have a course that's just doing amazingly well. Lots of people play, tremendous diversity. That particular course does really well to be entertaining for both beginners and more advanced players. And the only reason I say that is just within the Greater Bay Area, the resources, the experience is really deep. Folks who understand how to design and install courses that work really well in those specific locations that integrate well with other uses, that provide the right type of course for what would benefit the community. And so I'm, raising my hand to volunteer in that capacity, as I've done at many courses before. But it's a great thing to know that you've got strong expertise, people who have been involved in quite a few successful courses around the region, who I'm sure would come to help with this one.
Great. Thank you very much. Jake. We can't hear you, Jake. Jake, we can't hear you. It doesn't show you as muted, but. Should we go to Martin and hope Jake can get things set? Martin, you're up next. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, my name's Martin Smith. I'm an El Granada resident. I've lived here since 90, well, I grew up here, and then I moved back here after school. I'm an elementary school PE teacher in San Carlos. I've been doing that for 23 years. And I really also am beating the same drum. I see a huge need for resources for children to get outside. I think Maradi East, or the small piece of land, the Sonora piece, would be great for a smaller, family-friendly course. And I enjoy playing with my children. They're a little older now, but had there been a golf course to play on when my children were younger, I'm sure that we would have spent many wonderful hours on it. And it would have been great to be able to get them outside even more. So I'm just here to beat the same drum. My students love playing disc golf at school. They were doing some putting today inside of the gym. And I do put the basket out up on the big field that we have on our campus, and they really enjoy playing. They don't really care about the competition, but some of them do really like to try to see if they can get it in fewer strokes. And it's a really good resource. And I'd love to see one locally on the coast for the children of the coastside. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's go. Jake, do you think you have your technical problem solved?
I certainly hope so. I'm on an iPhone. I usually do this on a computer. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, great. So as Jim, I'm also a teacher, and Martin, who's a teacher. I teach here locally at the Half Moon Bay High School. I've been a longtime substitute teacher. I am a resident of El Granada and born and raised here in Half Moon Bay. I just wanted to speak real briefly a couple things. So we talk about the disc golf community, right? There is a really, really strong disc golf community, and I want to first acknowledge Leonard Muse. Leonard Muse is basically, he's a Hall of Fame Frisbee guy. He's been into Frisbee and discs for 30 years. He is literally internationally known, and for him to say he would volunteer and help design this is like, that's a really big deal. I wanted to speak to, we were using the word community. I wanted to tell you guys or reiterate to everybody here that we already in the school district, the Cabrillo Unified School District, have in our physical education curriculum, they already do 2 to 3 week sessions of disc golf. Both Cunha and the high school have a full set of baskets. And I have donated a bunch of my old discs and gone to San Francisco and got discs donated for the programs to be using. And they've been doing that now for about 5 years that I know of. So there's already a very, very strong community for disc golf locally on the coast side that is in the school district, not just necessarily, middle-aged white guys like myself, or, people who are playing disc golf that are in other generations. It is literally a multi-generational sport. The kids on our coast side are familiar with disc golf, play it 3 weeks out of the year, the school year, and many of them are really interested in it. In fact, there's a couple of former students that go and play weekly at the Golden Gate Park. there's a weekly tournament. I think it's really, really important. And I think as a body, you all should consider backing it because there's really already a community here. And it's not just homeowners or people like myself, renters, Martin, Jim. It is our kids. Our kids are already playing this sport, and there's nowhere to play in San Mateo. And we are surrounded by counties, Santa Cruz County, San Francisco, East Bay, Contra Costa. There's everywhere in the Bay Area except San Mateo County having some sort of free open space course to be played. Is that my time?
Yes, I'm trying to turn it off now. Here we go.
No worries. I really believe you guys, it's not just us trying to drum up a community and support. It's already existing. It's tapping into what's already here.
Great. Thank you, Jake.
President Dye, could I ask Jake a question, please?
Sure.
Jake, when Cunha and the high school do this 3-week course, where do they play?
So they said Cunha sets it up on the soccer field around at various spots around the soccer field. They set up anywhere from about 100 to 200 feet between the baskets. And at the high school, they do it on the baseball field. So in and around the baseball field, they start in the baseball field. They actually go around the back of the baseball field, and they'll leave that course set up for about 2 weeks. And the last couple of years, actually, the high school has asked me to come in and, give them a little demonstration. Here's how you throw. Here's how you putt, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything more? All right. Chris Butterworth.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. My name is Chris Butterworth. I'm a current resident and homeowner in Pacifica. I'm 56 years old and been tossing frisbees since 1985 when I started in San Diego at Morley Field. We need disc golf on the coast. There's a great demand for it. If you live on the coast, closest 2 courses is going to be Golden Gate Park, which is a free park at Marks Meadow. We have 18 holes there, and there is a pay-to-play course at Emerald Hills in Redwood City. If you go anywhere, East Bay, north of the bridge, you're going to find disc golf courses all over the place. The sport is absolutely exploding, and it's a fantastic sport. It's kept me going all these years, and the older I get, it's harder to get out and exercise, and disc golf is a great motivator. So it's great for the kids, but it's also great for us old guys. And I also wanted to touch on what Jake said about Leonard. Having Leonard Muse in our corner is a great thing. He's very well connected, has designed and built courses all over the Bay Area, and really happy to see him and everybody else here on this Zoom meeting that's supporting disc golf. You have my 100% support, and thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, anything for any further speakers? All right, members of the board want to express an opinion? Nancy, did I see your hand go up?
I committed to Pat that one of the things we learned at the last meeting was that disc golf was at least tentatively on an early draft of the Quarry Park Master Plan, and it is no longer on the most current draft of the Quarry Park Master Plan. So I committed to Pat that I would try to find out from Director Calderon the reasons why it hasn't carried through. It was a to be explored on an earlier version presentation that I found. And I committed to do that before the next PAC meeting. What I recall about during the Quarry Park Master Planning process, there were a number of amenities that were initially proposed for Murata East, including the pump track. And I recall 3 reasons why the county really pushed back on any active amenities over there. One was from the biologists, because there's at least a seasonal wetland there where the willows are. But the other 2 were there is no bathroom and there is no off-street parking. And so I'm just to preview, I think those are some of the reasons that I would hear about that site, but I will inquire. I'm really pleased to hear, Pat, that you had at least a modestly positive response on the CUSD property, which is just acres and acres of land. And given the, as Jake mentioned, the tie-in with programs that the school runs, maybe that will lend some strength to that proposal. So it sounds like we don't have information to make a decision on at this point until we get a little more information from those two potential sites.
Can I speak really quickly to it? I was at the Quarry Park Master Plan meeting. There were 5 proposals. On all of those proposals, and there were votes and everybody there, as Pat said, it was the fourth most popular. I mean, there were a lot of people that really wanted this thing to happen. And it's really kind of surprising to me. I'll be honest. It's kind of surprising to me that it's no longer on the master plan because it's really, I mean, I was there, I watched the whole thing, and it was, there were a lot of spirited conversations and people behind it. So that's really surprising to me.
I remember the disc golf table right next to the pump track table. So I know there were some
and there was some
parties there, but I'll try to find out what I can about why.
And I understand there's pushback, there always is. But it's a growing sport and it's multi-generational. It really is something we should get behind.
All right. Other board members have questions or comments?
So my comment would be, so my oldest son is 7 years old now. He's been around while I've been on this board, telling him that I'm part of Granada Community Services District and all these great things we supposedly do. And over the past couple of years, he's asked me, so where are these parks? Where are these meetings that you always talk about? I see you in meetings. I can hear you. I've seen you on TV. And I have absolutely nothing to show except for putting his preschool essentially out of business. And so when I look at him and we don't even talk about it anymore, he used to be so proud of me. He used to be so excited that I was elected to a board when he was part of my campaign. He turns 7 next month and we don't have one single thing to show for him. This is something that can be done in less than a day. The teachers go out and put it in their PE and then they take it back down a couple hours later. We don't need to overcomplicate this. We just need to decide, let's do it. Let's get the equipment. Let's put the stake in the ground. Guess what? It's removable. It's temporary. We could even call it a temporary disc golf course, do a trial to see if it works out. Then with a longer term plan being that maybe we find a different location, maybe we change the course.
David, where are you proposing to do this? David, where are you proposing?
I think there's multiple different locations. I think the board just needs to say, let's do it. And then we like I said, we buy the equipment. That's the first step. Once we have the equipment, we could do it literally in multiple different spots. I mean, Pat proposed a spot. There's Murata. There's different spots that we could. I think the first step is the equipment. Once we have the equipment, like I said, it could be a temporary thing. You know, they say a great course could take a couple weeks to design. You know, a simple course could be done in a couple hours. I think that it's disturbing to me that we call ourselves Granada Community Services District, and I'm on this board this long, and I've been fighting for so many different things, and literally I cannot look my son in the eye and take him to one single thing that we've done except for put his former preschool out of business. That's the only thing that I can point to that he knows about, that we talk about on a regular basis as we drive by it. And there's nothing else that I can go to and say, you know what, son, I'm proud to take you. Let's go out and, you know, this board has been, there's so much.
I think, David, you made your point.
Okay, and so my point is that this can't be a temporary thing. We don't need to look at this as we need to find the best location ever.
On property,
we need to make this grandiose plans. We just need to simplify and say, hey, let's get the equipment that we need and let's do it temporary, small.
Put it on somebody else's property.
And
David, are you proposing that we buy the equipment and then put it on somebody else's property?
I think that we use these experts that have been on the meeting. We could form a committee just like we did for our pump track. We let the pump track group drive a lot of what happened, course design, everything else. I think same thing. We get a disc golf committee They recommend what type of equipment we need to buy. That's the first step. Once we have the equipment and we go through that process, takes a couple months maybe to order, ship. Once we have that equipment, in the meantime, they're looking at multiple locations. Some of them have been mentioned. Most of them have been mentioned. We're negotiating with those different locations. By the time the equipment comes, we'll have hopefully a couple different spots, whether there are spots or other people's spots that we can put it on. And like I said, it could be a temporary location. We don't need to have this grandiose plan potentially. That could be the second phase down the road. I think the first phase is getting the equipment, committing to it, saying, hey, let's try this out. It might not be perfect. It might be small. It might be limited, but let's see what the demand is. Let's test it out. And then we'll get that feedback and we could build something better off of that feedback.
Thank you, David. I hear what you're saying. Anyone else on the board want to? Eric.
I have a question, and I don't know if the gentleman who does the course design is still on the phone. Is he still here, or did he drop off?
Yeah, this is Leonard. I'm still here.
Thank you, Leonard. So I think you mentioned the course over in San Leandro. There was 3,000 volunteer hours.
Yeah. That's not normal. It's a large course that required a lot of labor.
Okay. Can you clarify? I'm just curious, like what the labor. I mean, you know, I think of a regular golf course, and you know, that's a lot of grading.
Yeah, well, that's part of why that was extraordinary, because we did actually shape the earth a little bit at that site, because again, it was just bald terrain, no trees, no nothing, no elevation change. I was more giving that data as a representation of the enthusiasm, not as the norm in terms of how much work it takes. The pay-to-play course at Emerald Hills that somebody had mentioned earlier is you know, the only course in San Mateo County. I think we put in those baskets and the rubber mats we used in tees probably in about 45 or 50 volunteer hours. It took 2 days and we were open. Yeah, that's closer to the norm.
Okay.
But I really like what David was saying earlier about, you know, surveying the various potential sites, and someone like myself and some of the other people here with experience can kind of give you an idea how challenging a potential site might be, how you manage constraints, whether it be private property nearby where you don't want this flying, if it's sensitive habitat, it could be any number of things, right? And then we can kind of give you an idea of how challenging it might be, how expensive it might be, et cetera. But I'd say more typically, for folks who haven't looked at this before, a 9-hole course, and I applaud the comment earlier about more beginner-friendly, more entry-level, family-friendly courses. It tends to be enthusiasts who develop courses for their own skill level, and we tend to have a gap at the entry level. So it's brilliant, especially in a community that doesn't already have a bunch of courses to do that. But a typical basic course, well done, is around $1,000 to $1,500 per hole. So we're talking 10 to 15. For a beginner to mid-level course, an acre or less per hole. It depends upon a lot of things: elevation change, tree density, and so forth. The one in San Leandro, having no trees and having 2 tees and 2 baskets on every hole, including advanced level play, is 1.5 acres per hole. That's about as big as it gets. On the other hand, Golden Gate Park is 18 holes on 13 acres. It's a medium length course with a bunch of trees to sort of help keep discs from flying into other areas, so you can kind of play in a smaller space. So, you know, a half acre to 1 acre per hole, if you're doing a sort of a community level course, is a fair guess. But again, there's, you know, I'm currently working with the County Marin on a course with the sensitive habitat. And so a couple of holes we have to change because there's fritillaria. I always have trouble saying that. It's a native flower that we have to avoid. And, you know, so that took a bite, that took a half acre bite out of the area we were using. So you always have to deal with those things. And that's where the experience comes in.
Okay. All right. Any other board members who want to speak on this? Nancy?
I just have a question for Jake, and I think I know the answer, but worth asking, because the one discourse I've seen is at Emerald Hills on the conference.
I'm in the middle. I understand the middle of something, but I thought you were going to.
Could someone please mute their phone?
I wonder if the golf course, the Half Moon Bay Golf Course, has been approached.
I mean, the Ritz Carlton.
The Ocean Colony Golf Course, because it's common. I know I've seen them on more than one golf course, but I don't imagine that they would allow it on their golf course. But I just wondered if anybody had explored that.
I can speak to that a little bit. The majority of courses, ball golf courses that add disc golf baskets tend to be at the lower end of cost because it's just the integration. It's where the snowboarders on ski slopes 35 years ago. Who are these people, right? And so it takes a while before the regulars get comfortable with us. And so we're starting where revenue is a little leaner and the community is maybe a little more chill about our presence. And the other thing is just from a playability perspective, the scale of a big course like that, which is a link style, it's just not as many trees in the way, and we need trees. As obstacles for us. And so the smaller courses actually tend to suit us better because there's the big wide open fairways are not really that fun for us to throw. We enjoy throwing in the trees where we have to curve the discs.
Oh, interesting. Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess to follow up on that, so I mean, is kind of the typical philosophy to try to integrate these courses into the existing landscaping and tree cover?
Oh, absolutely. What we did at Oyster Bay, the San Little course, is really unusual, planting 300 trees. I was a little lost at first as a designer because ordinarily, I'm pointed toward a plot of land, 10, 20, 30 acres, and we use what's there. And that's what design's all about. Okay, there's a bunch of trees here and there's this there. Find a hole, make it fun, make it safe, make it sustainable, right? And so that's definitely the norm. The other thing that's also normal in the sport is using multi-use parks. Most of our courses are in shared space. They're not in private, exclusive space. It's important to design disc golf well so you don't have discs flying into picnic benches and so forth, right? But it's still quite the exception to have disc golf in a dedicated space. And so that's also normal for us. It's like Golden Gate Park, right? There's all kinds of people walking, riding their bikes in and around the course, but it's designed in such a way that it works really well.
Matthew, did you have your hand up?
Yes. I would be willing to talk about the district acquiring the items that are needed for this, but I have to say that none of the places mentioned so far seem viable to me. And after our Quarry Park pump track experience, I think I'm going to generally not ever want to put district money into projects that are not on district-owned property. But I think I remember researching this on the Disc Golf Association website, and it seems clear that the minimum space needed is 5 acres for a very small course. And so obviously that's more property than we have on Burnham Strip if we put allowed the entire park to be dedicated to this, even for short periods. The Murata Surf property, I don't think there's 5 acres there. That's not wetlands. And there are also wetlands on the Unified School District property at the north end of El Granada. So I'd be willing to consider, more conversation on this, but the property doesn't seem to me to be anywhere available within the district even. So there's a lot more work would have to be done on this for me to consider it more.
Yeah, I think we have some other business to move on to tonight, and this was a preliminary. I think I understand that there's enthusiasm for this. I certainly would not support buying equipment that we are somehow going to put onto somebody else's property without permission.
But it could be removed. That's my point. It could be easily removed. So
but we don't sneak equipment onto somebody else's property.
It wouldn't be
for-
sneaking, it would be an agreement, obviously. I
Well,
mean,
that's my point, David. I'm saying that the Quarry Park, I agree with Matthew. We did make a contribution to the Quarry Park master plan. They are finishing up their master plan process, and at that point, the pump track was included in their plan as kind of one of their number one priorities, and so we agreed to fund that. I would respect that process that's going forward and see how it's. I am willing to see us pursue at some point the school district property. As you all know, we have our hands full kind of right now. I understand David's frustration, but we are making progress on Burnham Park and the community center. And we do hope that we're going to have the pump track sometime in the next 6 months to a year up and working in Quarry Park. So we have accomplished quite a few things. I understand David and his son's frustration. I'm supportive of continuing to talk to the school district about that property and see how it could play a role here. Then I would think if we were to be able to enter into an agreement with them, we're doing this a little backwards, which says we're trying to find a place for disc golf. We have in the past always gone back to our community and said, what are your highest priorities for uses of this property? I think my inclination would be for us to perhaps move forward with additional discussions with the school district about leasing part of that property before we embark on doing anything at this point specific to support this particular recreational use, which we don't have a place for.
What about creating a subcommittee that, because since none of us are experts anywhere close to being experts, I don't even think anybody on this board has played.
Maybe I'd like to give it back to the PAC and see if they can come up with, I mean, we've had a lot of testimony tonight. It would be really nice to have some of this written down. Some of us come to us as, what does it take? How much property is necessary? I mean, what would the ideal be?
From what I've read, a minimum of 2 acres is needed for a small course, up to 2 acres.
I think it's 5 acres for a small.
He said 5 acres. The pump track committee was a PAC subcommittee.
If you Google what's the minimum amount for a disc golf course, it will say a minimum disc golf course is 2 acres for a small course, upwards of 2 acres per hole for a large course.
I did that. They say 5 acres is the minimum.
Okay.
And we don't have 2 acres right now that is not at this point committed to another use. So the question is, are we going to move forward with this when we don't have any place to put it and any agreement to share property with anyone else? I mean, that's the first thing we would have to look into. I have always been supportive of trying to get that. This does seem like a good use for some property, but since we don't have any, it seems premature to, and maybe we should ask the PAC to, sort of summarize this discussion tonight and exactly what they're looking for and how they think we could play a role.
Yeah, I would say the PAC creating a subcommittee as they did for the pump track, that was a PAC subcommittee that pursued that to try to accelerate that plan and continue to look at the properties. I'm glad Pat got a good response from Sean McEttridge, because I think that's maybe the 4th time we've approached them about potentially using some or all of that property. And that's the most positive response I think I've heard so far.
And it does make sense for the school district. The school district is low on operating revenue, and they have talked about converting that property to teacher housing. I know there's some environmental problems with it, but if we were to lease part of that property, that would be revenue, usable revenue to the district, ongoing operating revenue, which would be a good thing. So, I mean, while I really sympathize with your enthusiasm and everyone here and why this is a good thing, I personally don't see that we can really move forward with this until we have a place to put it.
Well, I mean, I think it makes sense for the PAC and it sounds like there's some volunteer enthusiasm to flesh this out. And I think until it's fleshed out, it's hard to make a decision and do anything. So, I mean, I feel like that's the next step. And there's some enthusiasm amongst the public to take that action.
So is it the consensus of the board that we'd like to refer this back to the PAC for kind of a write-up on what would be needed, and perhaps, you know, looking for a place that.
Yeah, I think back to PAC and to continue to look and explore locations. To one point David made, I know there is a group, and I know some of them are on tonight, that do own the temporary equipment and routinely do go to Quarry Park to set it up and play, because I've seen Jim and family going back and forth with their temporary equipment. So I don't think that the temporary equipment setup is a challenge. I think it's where can we get a good permanent course is really the ask.
Pat, did you want to wind this up?
Yes, I appreciate it. Well, first of all, I would ask the board, unofficially, are you enthusiastic about having a disc golf course or supporting it if a piece of property were to be found? That's a question that I have to ask everyone. I don't expect a vote or anything like that, but it's a rhetorical question. Are you enthusiastic? Do you support what these people here are saying tonight? Second, PAC would be happy to form a subcommittee that looks into it. I think that's the minimum we can do. And I think we could come back with written proposals, several alternatives, and present them to the board in a future meeting. We're going to have our next PAC meeting January 31st, and that's already on the agenda. So, and the other real quick thing that I wanted to mention, it's a low impact sport, meaning that there doesn't need to be a lot of ground disturbance from this activity. So we oftentimes find outdoor recreation sites on wetlands, not really, really sensitive wetlands. As you know, Burnham Strip has wetland issues. So I don't think that it disqualifies like the school district land or even other areas just because there's a seasonal wetland there. It's relatively low impact activity. And so I think it would still be possible.
It would be nice to have some documentation of that.
Yes.
There must be.
We can, and
because we're not going to be able to make a decision tonight. I think we're interested in hearing more about it, but it's backwards to me that we're asked to support something that we don't have a location for. And if we had a location, we might. I think obviously there's enthusiasm, and this seems like a good use. However, we might also want to ask the community, if we end up with some additional property, what the community's priorities are, rather than, we've had people show up at this meeting. It seems like a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to show up again when we figured that out.
Go back to.
I do feel we need to move on. This wasn't meant to be a whole public hearing on this. It was just meant to be an informational item and some discussion about the options for this.
So is the action taken from this is there general board support for the disc golf? Once a proposal is made, your board will consider it? Because it doesn't sound like it's a large outlay of money if they're asking the board to, buy.
I'm not willing to support purchasing equipment to be used on.
No, I'm not. Sorry, you interrupt. I think what your board needs from the disc golf people or from the PAC is a proposal that says, here, we're looking at doing disc golf on Quarry Park. Here's where we're going to lay it out. We have to work out an agreement with the county, and then you may consider purchasing the steel. I don't know what they call them, cages, holes, or whatever.
Yeah, let me put it this way, Chuck. I need to know what I'm considering before I can consider it.
Right, and so we need a proposal to that end from the disc golf proponents or PAC.
I wouldn't ask PAC to form a subcommittee and explore it if I wasn't interested in seeing the outcome and considering, because it's not a lot of cost for equipment. It just really depends on what it would cost for either sharing space with Quarry Park or sharing space with CUSD. So there are some cost considerations, but I don't think they're major.
Yeah, so I guess, Pat, the board's looking for you guys at PAC to, draft something up and with some kind of proposal. Is that correct, everybody?
Yep.
Yep, okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your enthusiasm. So, all right, moving on. The next item is just a couple things that we wanted to talk about. The next item is a history of the history of the Burnham Strip and El Granada. Our biologist at the Resource Conservation District had asked me at one point if we had a history of the Burnham Strip. So I started working on writing one, and it ended up to be fairly long. But it's posted on the agenda with the idea that perhaps we could post it on the website next to the Burnham Strip information, and people might find that interesting. But I also wanted to share with the community something very exciting that has happened, which is that in the course of working on that, I got in touch with, let me get rid of this. Hold on. There we go. The lady who wrote, this is backwards, I know, but this is Granada, a synonym for paradise, the railroad, the Ocean Shore Railroad years. And it's, she spent many years involved in local politics here, and gotten in touch with her. And through that process, she has sent me now a whole bunch of the documentation for this book, including all kinds of old historic photographs, some of the original posters of some of the 1909, the originals of the 1909 newspaper posters advertising El Granada. And we are going to, I guess they're all going to be backwards when I hold them up to the camera. But this is this is a copy of one. I didn't want to hold up the others because they're fragile, but this is, join these capitalists and make money for yourself. Get into good company where practical experience and demonstrated ability can help you pile up dollars for your old age. Read the story of Granada, the beautiful Burnham city, destined to become famous. This is one of them. And here's another one. This is Granada here on this remarkable beach. And as I say, we have the 18 miles below the cliff house is rapidly developing the most wonderful beach city in all the West, the future playground of the greatest good time loving people in the world. That's some of our disc golfers are, those good time loving people. Anyway, I'm going to log all these items in, and it's going to take a long time. It's numerous boxes worth, and some people may be interested, might be willing to volunteer to help me. And then the Half Moon Bay History Association is going to store them, but we're also going to have a legal agreement that these materials will be shared with us for a small museum in our eventual community center if we want to do that. So I think that's right. One other comment that I'll make is that at the end of the Burnham Strip history is this whole series of aerial photos from the earliest one in, I think, late 1920s to the present. And it's really interesting to look down and see how the Burnham Strip has developed through the years. So I had a really good time doing it and hope you'll find it interesting. And I also want to say and really thank Fran Pollard, who really helped me with the more recent years. And then Fran and I had, Fran had written, and then I helped just a little bit, a Preserving El Granada document, which is really focused in much more detail on the immense task that so many people worked really, really hard to protect the historic resources and the natural resources of this area. Quarry Park, they protected the Burnham Strip and so forth. And so she has written a piece called I think it's Preserving El Granada, and I am hoping that that will be completed and it will also be able to be posted so people can see and recognize all the people who worked really hard to make this area what it is. So that was just a report on that. Exciting news about all this new historic material. And unless someone has an objection, we're going to post the document of the history of the Burnham Strip on the website. Everybody okay with that?
All right, I suggest we post a link to the PDF like we have with other links, just so you don't have so much scroll on the page.
Oh, I agree completely.
That page, but I think it's great. And this it forms kind of the basis of the history walks that Barbara has done and taught me to do. So when we do more history walks this summer, this is really the content of the history walks. We didn't, we might add in the artichoke wars.
Yes, the artichoke wars are cool.
Of the 1930s.
Actually, they involved Tammany Hall, I think it was in New York City, and gangsters and actually murders. And it was, the history of this place is not boring at all. So anyway, so that was fun to do. And I'm really happy that I was able to spend time on it. So moving on, I'm going to ask Nancy to report on this, the update on the RFP for architects for the proposed community center.
So Barbara and I, as ad hoc committee for community center, we are 19 months from the end of the preschool lease, and we know how long things take from our park experience. So we wanted to get started on finding an architect who would design the future community center. And so we sourced from K&K and other sources a list of 7 architects. 3 are local small businesses. 4 are bigger firms. At least 3 of those larger firms have multiple community center or public buildings, libraries, community centers, town halls, and so on to their credit. So we sent an email to them just on Sunday to say, if you are interested, here's a little bit of background. If you would be interested in responding to an RFQ, we'd love to have a chat with you first. I've had 3, one of the small locals declined because he's semi-retired. 3 others have responded positively. Barbara and I had a Zoom meeting with the first of those today. It's the architecture firm that designed the Half Moon Bay Library. And we have a walkthrough of the preschool with another group that has multiple community centers to in their portfolio on Tuesday. Candace has, from the preschool, has given us the dates and days and times when we could do walkthroughs. We will always confirm with Candace at least a day ahead if we're going to bring somebody to make sure that she's there. But we just, the update is that we've started the progress of searching for an architecture partner, and we hope by the March board meeting, we'll be bringing a proposal for selecting one, and that would give us roughly 18 months, which today's architect thought sounded reasonable for the size project we have to do the design and permitting, so that when the building is open to us, we'll be ready to start the project.
Thank you, Nancy, for all your organizing and hard work on this. It's exciting to see this get moving as well. Anything further? Any items here? All right, moving on to item 4, consideration of terminating the permit agreement with San Mateo County for the medians and plazas in El Granada.
Hey, Barbara, did we skip item 2?
Oh, yes, we'll come back to that. Yeah, thank you. We'll do that after this one.
Okay. So at our last board meeting, your board had discussed terminating the agreement with the County of San Mateo. So back in 2014 or 2015, when the district became a Parks and Recs district, along with our sewer and garbage services, we had entered into an agreement with the County of San Mateo for a permit easement, if you will, across the medians. And at the time, the discussion was that the board was thinking about putting in some small improvements to the medians, pocket parks, picnic tables, that kind of thing. since that time, there's been some discussion between the county and the adjacent homeowners to the median as to who actually owns that property. That is still an issue that has not been resolved as of yet. So the county has been telling the homeowners who live along that boulevard that they own to the center of the median, depending on which side they are on, obviously, and that the county has no ownership to it. Jonathan Whitwer, our former district council, had produced an opinion letter that said, no, he believes the county owns it, but the medians, but at any rate, it's not something that concerns GCSD. It's more between the county and the homeowners. And in light of all this uncertainty and of course the associated liability with the trees and fire hazard and whatnot in the medians, your board had asked us to bring this to the agenda so you could decide whether you wanted to end this agreement with the county for our permit easement. So that's where we are right now.
I think another factor is the fact that several county staff have told people that we are responsible for upkeep of the medians, which isn't true even under the current agreement. But if we
the county's been trying to push liability off onto everybody. So, but the county. So,
and when we had our experience with Balboa meeting and making proposals, we had property owners who made it clear that any proposal to make changes on the medians would result in their suing us. And it just seems as if this is not meant to be at this point, unless the county is willing to negotiate something different or accept that they are the owners and can work this out with us. I think this does make sense. Other board members want to make a comment? Nancy.
I wasn't there right. I think I joined PAC right as this agreement was finalized, but to kind of to a point David was making earlier, my understanding is that the pursuing of the median agreement was really from the PAC's perspective, looking for a place to do some quick wins, knowing that the Burnham Park was going to take many years, but just to find a place where we could quickly put in a pocket park, or actually the pump track was the first thing they tried on the Cabrillo Circle. And the Cabrillo Circle pump track got immediate and pretty negative pushback from the immediate neighbors. For the Balboa Park, that was the first time, we had a generally positive response, but not from the immediate neighbors. And it's because one of them had just learned that she apparently owns the underlying land under the easement, and was concerned because she can't get liability insurance for it. And that's when we really started to hear about the liability issue. And it just, I think that issue has made it impossible for us to really pursue anything on the medians. But even before that, when we tried, they just weren't popular enough to make the investment, to make an improvement that we would have to maintain and pay for maintenance of, for all time. So my conclusion when I was still a PAC member was it was a good idea to try, but we tried and run into brick walls. And so I think, we've moved past that. We've passed the quick wins. As David said, it's been 7 years. It's too late for quick wins. And they're just not going to be easy to put anything useful as recreation on the medians. Most recently, with the wildfire and the tree removals, the misrepresentation of GCSD's roles repeatedly by DWP, even when I personally sent him the link to the median use permit, which he hadn't seen, co-avo, so that he could see that it was for recreational purposes and not for restoring landscaping. They continue to send people to us for landscaping restoration. And I think it's better to just end it so that we don't continually have that confusion.
Yeah, I mean, and I have to say I'm personally sympathetic to the desire to revegetate after the removal of the trees. But again, if the underlying property belongs to the adjacent property owners, we would have to have some kind of agreement, I guess, with each property owner. And would it be registered somehow on the deed? Because otherwise, what would happen if somebody new comes along? how does the liability work? There's just so many problems with it, the way it's now set up, that it seems better probably to start fresh with the county.
Well,
I
and
see we have people
it's an
want to speak.
interesting, I'm sorry, Barbara, it's an interesting legal wrinkle. When Jonathan was still on board here, our former district counsel, he said the county gave us a use permit for the medians that they're saying they don't own. So it's kind of a contradiction.
All right, does anyone else on the board want to comment?
Well,
Len,
my
you
only
had-
comment would be if they're not going to be for recreation, are we prepared to approve and watch ADUs be put in the medians? Because if that is the case and you read the ADU laws, then potentially those people could start building ADUs in the medians if that is their land. And so it's either one or the other. I kind of look at it as, if people went to it, I would love to see what their response would be to that. And I just see them as trying to have it both ways. They would obviously say, no way, you can't build an ADU there. That's out of the question. Okay, then what was the original purpose of the medians to be there for? And I think it's the county kind of playing games, but I think there's a way to continue to fight through it, because obviously they would never approve ADUs being built there. But I think if it's positioned that way, I think it becomes pretty clear that those are there for the community and community uses.
The county does have an easement over, transportation easement over the medians. So any other board member comments? Len, you had your hand up first. Oh, I'm sorry, Matthew, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that this idea that the adjacent property owners, and we are in that class, own to the middle of the medians is just crazy. It's just plain crazy how a legal advice at the county to come up with that conclusion is totally beyond me. But we have seen recently that with the tree removals at Columbus and them repeatedly telling people that our district was responsible for the medians, they haven't given up on it. And I think any kind of rational examination of the history since we got this so-called easement agreement shows that it's been actually an impediment agreement. And we haven't been able to do anything. And I don't want to reiterate everything that Directors Dye and Marsh already said. I agree with it totally. And let's just say goodbye to this. And if we can figure out some other way to help improve what should be public community assets, let's do that. But this one certainly didn't work.
So I'm just wondering though, we're making this decision proactively because we're concerned with liability, because we're concerned because even though there's no liability whatsoever if you read the contract because of what a couple people at the county are saying? Are we doing it because we're annoyed with the back and forth communication where people are coming to us and saying he said, she said, things from the, I'm just wondering, is it a liability concern? What's driving?
For me, I don't think we're going to use it. And so having it out there, if we're not going to use it, just creates confusion. So we should end it because we're not going to use it.
Well, I mean, I don't think this issue will be resolved until there's litigation between the homeowner and the county. And it hasn't happened in 100 years. It's probably not going to happen for another 100 years. So
we have two members.
It's a real bummer, but it's the reality of the situation.
Yes, I agree. That well said, Derek. Yes. All right, Len, you've had your hand up first.
Thank you. My name is Len Erickson. I'm a resident of El Granada. I'm a member of the Mid-Coast Community Council and also on their board as a representative to the Fire Safe Council for San Mateo County. Previously, with another MCC member, I met with Don Horsley and a member of county legal staff to discuss this issue. I won't go into the details of it, but it clearly brings up the point that everyone's aware of, namely the impact of the position the county has on ability to do much of anything with this land. So I more recently, as an individual and council member, gone back to Supervisor Horsley and tell him I was interested in speaking with Mike Kelly, the county executive director, to speak on this point, because either the opinion just stated by a council member that litigation would ultimately need to happen sometime in the next 100 years, it's not going anywhere. You know, certainly the MCC council has no budget for legal or anything like that, nor do we get into it. But I do believe there's reason to bring it forward there and ask for a better resolution of the situation. Furthermore, there's a grant from the county to look at both wildfire danger and revegetation, both in the community of El Granada and Quarry Park, the forest. They're due to report back in May. And I think with their final statements there, let's say sometime in June, there might be other things to cast light on it. Although my most important conversation in my current efforts is to talk to the county's director. And in terms of what you're doing, in the absence of any change of position, I would support what you're saying. So I would request that if you move ahead, I think you have a mandatory 90-day period, and then basically you go out to June 30th to just say that's the point at which we would like to see this decision enforced if a better solution can't be raised. Because I think once terminated, then you open up an even more complex process to go forward. So without going into the options and details there, I know there's a citizens group who's put time in to do this before. And for myself, I was a member of Midcoast Parklands, which operated Quarry Park. So there are other options, but I think even an option that involves some level of citizen activity needs the support of GCSD. And that goes back to the issue you're talking about here. So fundamentally, I'm saying I support the action if another option cannot be found, and just ask that you leave it open until the end of June, or at least don't execute until the end of June if something that's a more positive note comes up. Thank you.
What's my understanding? How does the agreement work? We have not, we
120 days.
issue a notice to terminate, and then it automatically terminates after 90 days, correct?
120.
Oh, 120, okay.
120.
Dave, like to speak?
I also am a member of the Midcoast Community Council, but obviously speaking as a private citizen. It's clear that post 1947, the property owners do have ownership to the center line. But I have developed to answer David's question about ADUs. The county, in this case, cities in other cases, has an easement for transportation that prevents anybody from developing it. I do agree that this is all prior to 1947, and the county is wrong. They will never change that position unless you want to litigate. We've already, you and I as a taxpayer, have already put too much time and energy into this. I don't see that it makes sense for GCSD to be the litigator on it. So I agree with the action to drop it. It's probably easier someday to drop a whole new agreement than it is to ever amend this agreement. So I would totally support your dropping your rights to this and letting 120 days run out. I think it's very unfortunate the county did, but given that they did, and the residents' reactions to the proposals, even without ownership, that it just does not make sense to maintain this. I was shocked to see it on the agenda, but after thinking about it, I agree it's the only appropriate action to take. Thanks.
Great, thank you. That means a lot for coming from you. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. Someone want to make a motion?
So
I raised my hand again.
Oh, all right. Quickly.
Point of clarification there. Obviously, Dave has a different opinion than I do in terms of the request, but my request on your action is in this 120-day period, do you have the option to drop it if you wish to? Or is it like a time bomb and what's said is irreversible?
I don't know.
It doesn't state we have that option. It just states that once we send the letter, it expires in 120 days.
Can somebody there determine if that option can exist? And it seems like an interpretation somebody could gather.
Well, does anyone on the board want to do that, or are we ready to move forward?
No,
I understand your point, Glenn.
All I'm asking is it's an interpretation. Either it's there or not. You don't have to use it.
Then I'm looking at it's a very simple paragraph in the agreement, which is in the agenda. And it's just 120 days notice to.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, it looks like I don't think the idea of giving notice and then changing your mind was contemplated in the agreement. So I mean, I think when we give notice, the clock starts and doesn't stop.
And I asked Bill Parkin, our attorney, about this, and he said, yes, it's pretty straightforward. You give notice and it expires in 120 days.
So am I, yeah, go ahead.
What's the pleasure of the board? Someone?
So I was just going to say, I would just like to second what Len said in terms of once we go down this path, we go down this path and it's too late versus I don't see much risk in waiting until June or waiting it out to see if we could push hard, especially considering that the whole charter when I ran of GCSD becoming GCSD was pocket parks. Everything was sold. This whole existence of GCSD was sold on the idea that we were going to promise all these pocket parks. And the fact that these board members could throw this out so easily, and I don't see any passion from the people that were saying we need pocket parks. We need to switch our whole charter to go from a sanitary district to community services district because our community needs these pocket parks. We have the land in our community. We're going to be the agency that fights for this. And then we give up so easily when everyone on this board is admitting, and everybody that has brought up comments has said, yes, all the data, all the facts, all the agreements are on our side. It's just a matter of the county digging their foot in, and just like everything in life, when there's change, especially government agencies don't like change and they're going to push back for the status quo. And I just think it's so concerning that not only are we giving up so easily, we're the ones giving in. There's no lawsuit. There's no, I don't see anything in front of us that says we must do this at this meeting. But, if we don't do this at this meeting, there's some major liability. There's some major, our staff is getting overwhelmed with requests and we just can't, we're going to have to hire a new staff member to keep up with the number of requests. I don't see any of that. I just see the board giving up on the whole charter of why we're in existence. And I just cannot find it that the board members that are on this board with me, especially the ones that have been here for a while and that were part of this push to become a sanitary district into a community services district, aren't standing up and saying we need to fight for this for as long as possible, and let's buy ourselves at least a few more months or a year where we actually push hard with the county to make something happen. Even if it's just putting one little bench me and my son could go sit at and watch the sunset.
Okay, David, you made your point and you were impassioned about it, and we really all heard you. I know that when we proposed improving the picnic tables on the Balboa median, that at least one neighbor was very serious about threatening to sue us if we tried to do that. So.
And there's been one neighbor that threatened the pump tracks in every single meeting. If we're going to hold off on one neighbor, then we shouldn't do the Burnham Strip. We shouldn't do anything, because anything we ever do, there's always going to be at least one neighbor, maybe two, that are pissed off and don't want things to happen. I've been in a lot of public agents meetings and there's always at least one. And that, if I would love to see that lawsuit go to court of a neighbor suing over a bench. That would be an all-time historic lawsuit that would probably go nowhere. But I just cannot believe that our whole charter, what we're in existence for, why we are elected to this board, our board is giving up on and I don't see what the outside pressure is.
David, you've said it a number of times.
If I saw the liability, I could understand, but I don't understand why the board is like actively pushing to fold this agreement that we worked so hard to create. And I'm not just talking about the agreement itself and all the members that put in time and effort. I'm talking about actually going back even further and becoming GCSD, where we sold the public on this idea that we were going to be
David.
And we did. It was all about pocket parks. That's all
David,
I heard when GCSD
made your
was
point,
going from a
David,
sanitary
you need
district
to
to
stop saying the same thing over and over.
Then someone needs to explain to me what this outside push is forcing us to do this, because I'm not seeing it. No one's still explained to me. I understand that it might not be going anywhere, but that's not a good enough reason to give up. To me, that means we got to fight harder. To me, that means this is the time to increase our communication with the county and try to get something done for 6 months and see a good effort, back and forth communications, revamp up the meetings, and then we could throw in the towel. But I just see us throwing in the towel.
Okay, David, Nancy has had her hand raised. And David, again, you make your points, but you need to not say it over and over, because we do want to hear your opinion. But it's just hard when you need to make your point and then let others respond. Nancy, did you want to speak?
Just two things, and then I'm willing to make a motion. I did actually type up, I think, about 70 responses from the public on our proposed park on the Balboa Circle, and it really wasn't just one person. It was really mixed. And while members of PAC had a lot of enthusiasm for pocket parks, we haven't found members of the public with the same level of enthusiasm. It really was 50-50. And that material is on the website and available for anybody to read. We just haven't had enthusiasm from the neighbors about putting things on the median. Most people would like them to remain as they are, but that includes vegetating. My second point was to Len's. I heard you, Len, but mostly what I heard was the action coming is about the wildfire plan and revegetation, and neither of those is really in our remit, which is recreation and recreation uses. And so I'm really not persuaded to wait to see what happens with wildfire and revegetation. As a resident, I want both those things to happen and a good job to be done with them, and to have medians that don't look like the one on the Alameda between Portola and Isabella that was left barren and weedy. But I don't think that's our mission with this permit or even in our charter. So I would make a motion that we proceed with this termination of the permit agreement.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there a further board discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to add, I would love to point back to this meeting, and I think it says a lot about what our charter is and what Matthew said years ago when he sold the public on why we needed GCSD and how this board's about to vote right now. And I think it says a lot, and it says a lot about empire building and selling the public on a bill of goods when it comes down to it. Where there's nothing behind it. There's nothing behind it. And this vote is going to say it all. I predict how you guys are going to vote already. And it's interesting that the same people that sold so hard on the public why we needed GCSD, why we needed the pocket parks for this community, aren't even putting up any fight at all.
And Barbara, you have to call the question.
I know. I was going to give Len 1 minute to add something here.
Yeah, just a point of clarification on my part. I believe that your actions with respect to the medians under the banner of pocket parks was miscast. I've looked at medians and lived in Portland, Sacramento, and Denver. They all have medians of this type. They're all just passive green space vegetated with grass or small shrubs. And that's what I think people would want, not that. So I don't have a problem with the fact that if you say your banner really forces you to go to pocket parks, and basically then the avenue to pursue is a different type of an agreement, either supported by you as a government agent or somebody else. So, I mean, I appreciate the support from the one council member, but I feel that's miscast too. So having said that, go for your vote.
All right. I want to say that while I am sympathetic to the revegetation question. I just don't think this agreement works in any way whatsoever.
No, I understand. So
Can we have a roll call vote?
Okay, Director Dye,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Marsh,
Yes.
Director Sukamel. You're muted.
Sorry, yes.
And Director Seaton.
No.
Okay.
Thank you,
motion-
Len and Dave, for coming and staying this late in our meeting. Appreciate your input on this.
So motion passes 4-1. Director Seaton opposed.
All right. Shall we go back to board committees?
Pat, do you want to mention that the letter itself has been updated from the original pack?
Yes, and it's actually updated on the website as well, Nancy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good point, though. And thank you, Nancy, for catching that.
It was a good change. All right. Established board committees, moving back to established board committees and appoint members. We've had 2 ad hoc committees, a Burnham Park Planning and Approval Committee and a community center committee. We are proposing to continue both of those ad hoc committees. As the president, I guess I get to make the appointments on the Burnham Park Committee. I'm hoping, Matthew, you will continue to work on the Burnham Park Planning and Approval Process ad hoc committee. Yes. Matthew, of course, brings lots of planning background experience in planning and approval process and review processes, so he's really helpful. And I will serve on that with him. And the same thing with the community center subcommittee, ad hoc committee. Nancy's done a great job so far moving forward with that. And I would also like to serve on that with her. That leaves Eric and David without subcommittees. Is there anything in particular you'd be interested in doing outside of the function of the board?
I'll do any that you guys would put me on.
Okay, thanks. Well, we'll see if we come up with a need for another subcommittee, another ad hoc committee. So, but just for this moment, unless someone else has an addition, we'll leave it at those 2 continuing.
No, I'm good.
Good. Thanks, Eric. We appreciate you representing us at special districts.
And I just want to add, I'm reading right now, what's the reason for the proposal for GCSD? It has been demonstrated there's an overwhelming need for neighborhood parks and recreation services in the unincorporated Granada Sanitary District area.
And that's
So
why
that
we're
was
going to
the
look at
first sentence of the application when GCSD became GCSD. And now we have people saying neighborhood parks aren't that important.
I'm just going to point out neighborhood and
No
pocket
one
are
said
not the
that.
same
No one
word.
said anything even close to that. What you fail to notice
This is the application that I'm reading from LAFCO.
What you are failing to notice
Question
is
3.
that
What are the reasons for the
agreement with
proposal?
the county is worse than not having the agreement with the county.
Yeah, well, and we're off that. Yeah, guys, we're off that item. So Barbara, if you could please reiterate the committee appointment, and then the board actually has to take a vote on that.
Oh, we do. Okay, so the ad hoc committee for reviewing the planning process for Burnham Park is Matthew Clark and myself.
Okay.
And the community center outreach and committee, like
Design and outreach.
Yes, design and outreach committee is Nancy Marsh and myself.
Okay.
Do we need a
Okay,
motion?
would someone like a motion to approve those committee appointments?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Dye.
Yes.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Marsh.
Aye. Director
Sukamel.
Aye.
And Director Seaton.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Consider moving on to item 5, consideration of Burnham Strip property use request from Flynn Creek Circus.
Okay, so as you can see, we included in the agenda the email we got basically out of the blue from the Flynn Creek Circus. So they are requesting to hold their circus, if you will, on the Burnham Strip this summer, and I responded to them and told them this is a board policy, this is not something I can make. So I put it on the agenda for your board to consider.
I think one of the commitments we've made to this community is that we don't want to bring a lot of outsiders here. Our parks should be community parks, neighborhood parks. So I am not particularly interested in having a circus on. It seems like it's almost like, what, a circus on the Burnham Strip? Well, no, I don't think so. But we thought we might have a discussion of our philosophy of who gets to use the Burnham Strip. Nancy, do you want to say?
Just from all of the feedback we've had on what we are planning to do on the Burnham Strip, one of the number one concerns was to number one wishes was to preserve the view shed. And so I think the tent being up for any period of time would block the view. And the two things that concerned people most were bringing in more traffic and bringing in more non-local traffic. We already have ways sending people through Obispo and Avenue Alhambra whenever one is backed up. And so if there were a very visible circus tent visible to Highway 1 on the Burnham Strip, I think we'd probably have a riot from the people in the neighborhood who are already concerned with what Waze does to it. So I don't think it's a great place to attract traffic. There's not parking. I just don't think it's a great space for that.
So decline it politely.
I would decline it.
Do we need a motion on that, Chuck? Does anyone?
Yeah.
I mean, my comment is I think it's a good fit. It's founded specifically to call it as a rurally based circus theater company. Just because the founder isn't from Half Moon Bay, I think it's a perfect fit that, you know, that this type of organization is targeted for places like ours. I think that if you actually look into what they're offering, I think it's not the traditional circus that I think you guys have in mind. I would encourage you guys to look a little bit more into it before making a decision. I just think it's so funny that it's almost laughable that anything whatsoever that could, like, I look at it like I keep talking about my son, anything that I could point to and say, you know what, son, here we go. We got something. It might only be for a weekend and it might be taken down by Sunday night, but you know what? Here's something we can go to that I was part of. And guess what? Of course, this board just shuts it down because this is the no fun board. There's anything that is actually any fun whatsoever and that is actually engaging to the community can't be done because we're bringing up the views. The view corridor, this is for a weekend. It's going to be taken down. And we're saying that because our excuse why we can't do this is because of the views, when it's almost illogical that's why we're shutting this down, is because we're afraid of riot. If that's really what you mean, that you really think people are going to riot because we're going to have a circus for a weekend, it's crazy to me. People are going to riot eventually if they pay attention to this meeting and see we're a community services district and we just went through a whole meeting shutting down everything whatsoever that has to do with adding value to our community. Everything.
Except for all the work.
It doesn't matter what the topic is. I can bring up every topic and this board will shut it down if there's any fun whatsoever. If kids can be entertained by it, guess what? Do not do it, is what this board is saying.
David.
And it's pretty clear. I would love if people could stand and watch a whole meeting and people didn't drop off. They would walk away and say, hey, you guys need to be shut down. You guys aren't a community services district. You guys are an anti-community services district. You need to add the A tier charter. A GCSD is what we are. And it's pretty clear to me. Topic after topic, meeting after meeting, month after month. It doesn't matter what the topic is. If there is any fun for our community and our kids, don't even consider it. Shut it down before you even look at the website. Because guess what? Because there's going to be riots in the streets. Riots in the streets because of the impact of the view corridor for a weekend? Come on. That's
Are there any other board members
would like to
who would support the circus?
And my only comment was looking at his letter, there's nothing about a weekend. He asked for a rental agreement for the summer.
I mean, their
Matthew has
footprint
his hand
is
raised.
their footprint is very large. I mean, I can't see seating in here, but I mean, it's a significant endeavor, and probably too big for that space.
Matthew?
I was going to echo Director Sukamel on a previous item said, basically, I can't consider something until there's something to consider. And that's where we are with this letter. It's so vague. We have no idea what this is about. And, he's asking for information from us to see if he can make this fit. And when you come and ask for permission like this, it's up to the asker to say, here's what we are, here's how we do it, etc. We don't have any of that. And so we don't have anything to consider.
All right, so consensus of the board, except for David, is that we're going to politely decline the request. Okay, that's fine.
But I did review their website. It is a really large tent.
Okay.
All right. Anything further in that item? Okay,
Nope.
Moving on to report on sewer authority mid-coast side meetings. What time is it? I thought it would be of interest for you to see a couple of the slides that were shown at the last SAM meeting. Can I share my, can I
Yes,
share?
you can, yeah.
Can everyone see that? So it's not a PowerPoint. So here's, this is December 13th when this is Seymour Ditch in Half Moon Bay, just showing the amount of water that was around. So there were 3 major storms from October to December. From October 20th to 25th, there was 11 inches of rain. December 12th to 16th, 6.66 inches of rain. And then 22nd to 25th, additional rain. The average dry weather flow for the SAM plant is 3.69 million gallons a day. And the average daily maximum monthly flow is 5 million gallons. But the peak hourly wet weather flow, that's the highest amount that can go through the plant at any one time, is 15 million gallons a day. And the peak day is 9 million gallons per day. So it can, the first one, the maximum rainfall was almost 5 inches, and they were up to 9 million gallons on October 24th, and all of their pumps were working. And our pump station was only 6 inches away from spill elevation. And there's a really cool, all right, this is a graph that shows the plant influent. The black line is the water coming into the SAM plant. The red line at the top is the maximum, the design capacity, and the blue is the flow rate through the Portola station. And I can share it. I know there's a lot of information here, but I think it's interesting to see how the flow built and how close it came to problems at the SAM plant. This is the water in the Portola pump station, the wet well where the water is being pumped down. And then this is a really good cross section of the, Matthew, did you want to jump in on that?
Oh, I just wanted to mention that we were told that the flow was probably over 15 MGD, but the plant was designed for a maximum of 15 MGD. And so that's as high as their gauge goes.
Yes. So this is how the wet weather storage works. And so the water is flowing on the left there. That's the Portola wet well, and the water is flowing straight through this cross section. And as it fills up, the water comes up this slanted pipe here and over to the wet weather storage facility. And then as the water level drops, the wet weather storage facility, the two sections empty out. And so I just think the whole wet weather storage thing is very, very clever system because there's no moving parts, really. It's just as it fills up, it goes over into the wet weather storage, and then as the water level goes back down, the water goes back into the system. So, so this is the 12th to 16th one. It went up to the wet weather storage went to 17 feet. And then this is the second storm. And you can see there was only a brief period where it was up at the design capacity. But I think it's interesting. I know there's a lot here, but I just think it's, I can provide this, but I thought you might be interested in seeing some of these graphs of how the water level rose during these big storms and the fact that we do have an issue about this. And so there's some damage. There was flooding at the effluent building, and effluent went into the headworks. But the staff was there and managed to, this is the flooding. This is the manhole outside of the effluent building. The staff managed to, using a portable pump, which did some extra pumping of material to bypass the system so that it wouldn't be overwhelmed. And the fact that this portable pump was here being used for this actually resulted in a spill up at Montero when one of their pumps there failed. And if they had been able to move this one up there, they would not have had that spill. And then this shows the blue, the Portola flow, and then the black line is the coming into the plant. So the difference is really the Half Moon Bay flows. And then this is the red line is the Walker tank, which is a big tank that they have up in Montero that can hold material. You can see the blue line is the Portola wet well levels, and when it went into the wet weather thing, and then the black is, and the black is the hourly average of the plant, what was coming into the plant. So you can see, and this is the water's 4 inches, 4 feet below the, anyway. So there's going to be some a real serious look at what we can, how we can make changes at the plant to prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future. And I thought you might, I know that was, I can send it to anyone who's interested, but I thought those charts were kind of sobering. Matthew.
I wanted to mention that the slide that you showed of the water going into the drain at the plant itself shows how critical that particular moment was. And the main source of fear that everything's going to be shut down is that the electrical room at the wastewater treatment plant is actually below ground. And if it floods, all the circuits go out and the plant stops functioning completely. And so Sam has appointed a subcommittee to examine this, and I think personally this is an item that needs action as fast as we can do it. And I'm just warning all of us, it's going to be very expensive because it, to me, not an engineer, but the only sensible thing to do is to elevate that entire electrical system out of the possibility of being flooded. And that's going to be a very expensive proposition.
I guess somebody has proposed some other alternatives too, which is essentially putting a berm around the building, which would be much less expensive and at least a temporary solution, and, you know, sealing it up better. I mean, we'll get a look at all these things and let some engineers figure out what the right solution is. But we did come very close. I mean, Pacifica had a 3 million gallon spill in the same storm. So right now our system is working. Thank goodness we put in that second batch of wet weather storage, because that made a big difference. And they're talking about maybe wanting to put in, it was originally designed for 3 batches, and they're talking about maybe putting in, and I keep saying, you got 2 years to put more boxes in there. And then once the park's in, you're not digging it up again. So, yeah, we survived. Thanks to pretty much thanks to the Walker tank in Montera and the wet weather storage. We survived this really unusually big storm.
Was there any discussion of, I know one of the MCC members had written an editorial about the need for Half Moon Bay to find space in their system for storage tanks so that you get some of their water coming in as well as the water coming down from the north. Was that any serious discussion about that?
Well, the managing director for SAM has stated that Half Moon Bay needs to have its own wet weather storage. So, Chuck, do you want to speak to all this?
I'll try not to, but yeah, the bigger question is, and Barbara had asked me about this last month, it's that we may need more wet weather storage, but that's something we should let the engineers figure out whether it's best at Half Moon Bay. Again, the 3 districts are arbitrary political designations. An engineer would treat the entire IPS as, an entire system and figure out where the storage is best placed. So it's not a tit for tat. We have to have one. Montera has to have one. Half Moon Bay has to have one. It's where's the best spot for the storage, and it may very well be in Half Moon Bay. But I'm not a design engineer. So.
And can you give us? Yep. So, Delia?
I just have a real quick question. Did anybody say how frequent the storm that happened in December is likely to happen in the future? I'm just curious because I have no idea.
That gets into this whole, 10-year storm, 25-year storm. That gets real deep into engineering, and it's tough to label that stuff, Delia.
Okay.
I would also add that's all based on historical records, not.
Right.
So we could expect maybe having a lot of more rain in the future. The likelihood is so it's questionable, I guess.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, they don't. They have trouble labeling these things. Yeah.
But in that one in October, I have a little weather station, and by mid-October, year to date, we had 11 inches of rain, and then we had 11 inches of rain in 2 days. That was fairly unusual.
And Eric, I don't know if you went deep into this stuff with your engineering, but.
No, well, we have other folks who do that stuff, but
right.
I think we're getting to the point where all bets are off in terms of what the future looks like.
Right. And there's different, as Barbara pointed out with her graphs, there's instantaneous flow. And that's kind of one of the bigger issues. The plant can take 9 million gallons in a day, but it can only take 15 million gallons, in an hour, which an engineer would do in gallons per minute rather than million gallons a day. But they're trying to figure that stuff out. So and as you get more storms, the groundwater rises. So there's more leakage into the pipes from that versus the inflow from surface water and whatnot.
And one of the things that I guess in the engineer's report at the end is that we just finished phase 1 of our capital improvement program for El Granada, which we're replacing the old clay pipes, which had a lot of joints, which is where some of the infiltration comes from. And as we replace those with plastic pipes that don't have any joints, we're going to reduce the amount of water that's getting into our system. So that's a good thing that we're doing.
Yeah, and the plastic pipe actually has a joint every 20 feet or so. But Barbara's right.
The fused joint.
They're welded joints, I'm assuming, so they're probably a little better than the old school.
Yeah, they use different. Yeah, they use different types of pipe, and I can't remember what we used last. But the other old ones are clay and have a
Or
joint.
slip fit, right? So
Yeah, there's every 3 to 5 feet, they got the bell housing and that, so they're not very well sealed.
I got a piece of the pipe when they were doing the work in Isabella, of the old pipe.
Did you steal it or did they give it to you?
I'm not saying. It was left on the side of the road. And so I thought, oh, good, here's a historic artifact.
Yeah, good.
Can you give us an update on where the permit program stands? Because I think it's coming back to us at our next SAM meeting, and I don't really know where we are. I know the managers are working on this.
So yeah, the non-domestic permitting program. So Jeremy Youngrice, the attorney for SAM, has produced a latest iteration, which he circulated last Friday. And we have a managers meeting tomorrow to discuss that latest iteration. I don't think it's demonstrably changed from what the board saw, the SAM board saw. So we'll be discussing that. And I think it's on the agenda for Monday, correct? There's a meeting Monday, right?
No, I haven't seen the agenda yet.
Yeah,
They'll
so there's a
come.
meeting Monday, so it'll be on that
Not-
agenda. Yeah.
I'm not the chair anymore, so I don't get to see the agenda ahead of time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so we'll be discussing that tomorrow.
And it's my understanding that now we would be the interface with the businesses in our district, but the final permit would still be signed by SAM.
Yes, and that's kind of always how it's been. Yeah, and we understand they're the people running the treatment plant, so they've got their MPDES permit and regional board permit and whatnot. So they're the same, but yeah. So they have to have that venue, and we'll just work with them to work with our ratepayers.
So what's the latest on the BOD readings in terms of the latest spikes? Have we seen anything?
I haven't heard anything about the plant BODs, David, but they haven't had any issues. They're still running on that aeration basin 3 with the new diffusers. But if I think we have the SAM report in the agenda here, so you can kind of read a daily blow by blow of what they're doing. But they haven't had any plant upsets recently, or
It's my understanding that the numbers are creeping up, however. The numbers are much higher than they were in previous years.
Well, the BOD numbers, broadly speaking, to the treatment plant have crept up over the past 3 or 4 years. Yeah. But again, the plant itself adjusts to that. So.
All right. Anything else, Matthew, on the SAM report?
No, you guys just covered it, I think. I don't want to even talk about the crazy December 29th meeting.
Probably best not to, you're right.
So we did get a notice today that SAM won an award for safe, I think it's an OSHA award, and they got $50,000 to share among all the employees, and a banner and a plaque and everything for a very safe work site. So that's a good thing. All right, moving on to consent agenda. Do I have to read what's in it?
No, you do not.
Okay. Do we have anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda? We have a motion to approve.
move to approve.
All right, is there a second? Nancy? All right. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Dye?
Yes.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Marsh?
Aye.
Director Sukamo?
Aye.
And Director Seaton?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0. Who made the motion?
I did.
Okay, thanks, Eric.
On committee reports on seminars, conferences, or committee meetings? Anything?
Nope.
Okay. Attorney's report. We had a report in closed session, I think. General manager's report.
I've got nothing further.
Administrative staff report.
Oh, I just wanted to apologize for missing the one Burnham Strip committee and my memo back on that item for the committees. And I hope the couch and the chairs and the junk that were out by the skate ramp last week are gone. I haven't had a chance to look. So I did ask for Ecology and they were going to go pick it up. So that's all I have to report.
And people seem to be adjusting to the new trash regime. I think everybody's working on it.
Yeah.
All right. Engineers report. I thought it was interesting that, they fixed the Isabella problem. The Medio Beach. I didn't realize that the Medio Creek Bridge crossing, we had to get a contractor in there to backfill.
Yeah, we had a during that storm, we had one of the pipes break and it was leaking groundwater as it turned out, but it was simpler to just have them backfill the abandoned manhole with the two sack slurry, a mix of concrete.
And I guess.
And it made the county happy, so it was just easier.
Good. And the county is going to do a cleanup of that area and we'll take our abandoned pipe out at that time. It's very heavy. It's not going anywhere. So.
Right. Yeah, correct.
Is that right? Yes. And I guess
Actually, it's already been done and the buttresses have been, the rocks have been moved to the side. And so, yeah. Well, Dave, I think you had something to say?
I was going to say, I thought the pipe was still there buried. And I was a little surprised the county was going to pull it out for you because they're done.
Oh, well, then we'll have to double check with the DLS.
It would have been great if they did, but if they hadn't done it by the 12th, they weren't going to do it because they didn't do any work after that.
Okay. All right. And I guess Big Wave is going to have to do a permit for their second building, which has a number of drains and sinks and so forth in the garages. So we will be getting that application from them soon. So those were all the things. And have they gone out for bid for part 2 of the capital improvement program?
No, I've talked to John Rayner about that, and they will be beginning design shortly. So they're going to identify the pipeline sections that we're going to do. We've already got them identified from the broader plan, but they generally confirm it and look at any recent additions that may occur, and then we go forward from there.
Yeah, there's a few this time in Miramar and up higher. They sort of did the ones down in the lower part of El Granada last time.
Yes.
All right. Future agenda items. I think.
Park finance plan.
Yes, we're looking forward to that next month.
I see it at the top of the list, Chuck. I'm very happy.
There you go.
Anything further from anyone? Anything that we should have discussed that we haven't? All right, thank you all very much. I do want to say, David, that I've been working really hard on Burnham Park and working with Nancy on the community center, and we are really trying hard to make improvements for this county. We've had activities in the park. We are doing our best to fulfill our mission for the people of El Granada in a responsible way. So just wanted to get that on the record. So, all right, I guess we're done. Good night, everyone.
And I would say sometimes you just gotta look around and see what's out there and look how the board votes, and we have chances to vote and chances to take action.
Good night, everyone.
And
thanks everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Good night.